Using the screen name Lorne A20014, he tells her how to masturbate and then asks her if she wants to see him naked. She agrees and he turns on his webcam.
Lorne Armstrong was born on October 18, 1970 in Cambridge, Maine, and his childhood was troubling to say the least. His father left him at a young age, leaving his mother, Gwendolyn Armstrong, to take care of him and his 5 other siblings. This led to a whole lot of problems that Lorne himself would comment on, like his difficulty with people leaving him and him lacking and wanting more attention. Other than that, Lorne would truck through life fine, graduating high school in 1989 and joining the Air Force as a mechanic in 1991. He would do notable things while in the Air Force, like becoming a truck mechanic, but all things weren't so sweet down in Alaska, as Lorne would fall in love with a girl named Paula. This relationship sadly fell through, as Lorne would come to discover that Paula was sleeping with other guys, and therefore unfaithful. Although seemingly small, this would set a bad precedent in Lorne's life in regard to his poor relationships. Lorne was discharged from the military in 1993 for failing a trade course test, and he went back to Maine and Washington State in order to find a job. He would pursue many jobs in the next 11 years, most of which were involving some sort of handiwork. The only important one you need to know about though is A1 Septic Service and Construction, a business he created in 2001. In 2002, Lorne started talking to a girl named Amanda James on the internet, getting into another relationship that would fail in the long run. He sent money and Dale Earnhardt Jr. memorabilia to make her happy. He got to know a lot about her in the 2 years they spoke to one another, and he even moved back to Maine permanently to be closer to her. After moving to Maine and meeting up with his sister, Lorne discovers that Amanda was lying to him this whole time, so they slowly drift apart. Lorne becomes single, and his views on relationships worsen. After this, Lorne would hit a rough spot in his life, and between 2004 and 2007, he would go on to do 2 things that he would come to regret in the future. Firstly, Lorne would engage in conversation with 2 underage girls who are referred to as the MySpace girls. He met both of these girls online in 2004, and Lorne has claimed that he revealed himself and talked sexually to them on multiple occasions. Lorne's retelling of both of these stories go like this. The first girl was 16 years old when Lorne started talking to her, and he had developed slight romantic feelings for her that thankfully didn't go anywhere. 3 years later, this girl would randomly visit Lorne one day, but nothing happened, and they stopped talking to each other afterward. The second girl Lorne mentioned was 15 when they first started chatting, and they had gotten so close that they decided to date each other. 4 months later, they had planned to meet each other at a state fair, but thankfully, the girl got the day of the fair wrong, so Lorne showed up a day earlier and the 2 never met. After that, Lorne was talked to, and both he and the girl decided that it would be best to wait till she was out of high school to try something. The other terrible thing Lorne would do involved a couple who had just moved to Maine. Betty and her husband Eric had finally settled down on an uninhabited piece of land in Maine and decided that they wanted renovations done on their mobile home. After struggling to find someone to do the construction work, they stumbled upon Lorne's construction company and decided to hire him. The job cost $60,000 in total, and a prepayment of $30,000 was given to Lorne to start the project. He started some of the work on the renovations, but it wasn't $30,000 of work, so when Lorne asked for another $10,000, Betty declined, and he demanded that he tell him what he did with the first $30,000, since it clearly didn't go to the materials. Not only did Lorne fail to provide those numbers, but he bailed from the job on January 4th, 2007, effectively stealing $30,000 from Betty. Betty constantly hounded Lorne for the money, but was also occupied with her husband's health, as Eric would suffer from a stroke and a heart attack, leaving him in the hospital and shifting Betty's focus away from Lorne. This allowed Lorne to skip town and move from Maine to Nashville, Tennessee in the summer of 2007, leaving behind all of his problems. While in Tennessee, Lorne would get a new job and would begin to browse more chat rooms looking for people to talk to. This led to Lorne meeting a girl with the username KaylaPrincess94, whose real name was Kayla. Despite Kayla claiming to be 13 years old, Lorne would quickly make sexual advances on her, asking her what sex is and getting Kayla to masturbate for him. Kayla and Lorne would then talk to each other for the next month, and Lorne would quickly grow to love Kayla and want to marry her in the future. What Lorne didn't know is that Kayla was actually a decoy ran by a group called Perverted Justice. Perverted Justice is a watchdog organization group with the goal of finding and catching child predators by using volunteer actors to pretend to be children online to lure in the predators. They had recently teamed up with Dateline NBC, a television show that usually revolves around true crime stories, and created a new show called To Catch a Predator, a show in which they filmed the process of finding and confronting people who seek to abuse children sexually. After talking to Kayla for a month, Lorne and Kayla had planned to meet each other at her house on October 18th, 2007, which just happened to be Lorne's birthday. Lorne makes his way to the house, and after talking to who he thought was Kayla, a tall suited man named Chris Hansen comes out and grills Lorne for his actions. Then, Chris reveals that this entire thing was a setup. The house was decked with cameras, Kayla was a paid actress, and Lorne's entire conversation with Kayla online was documented and aired on television. To make matters even worse, Lorne was arrested once he tried to leave the Sting house. Lorne was incarcerated on the same night he was arrested, pleaded guilty to all of the charges, and spent the next 5 years, 2 weeks, and 5 days in prison. While in prison, Lorne partook in various activities like book writing, but something else was being created outside the prison walls. To Catch a Predator was a very popular show, ending in 2007, and with popular shows, groups and communities start to form around the discussion of the show, and TCAP was no different. YouTube channels were created and people would react to the predators, people would make memes about the predators, and catchphrases and inside jokes would form. As this fan base was rising, Lorne Armstrong would be released from prison in 2015, and this was a big deal. So big in fact that a splinter group formed where they only discussed Lorne Armstrong. This group was called the Church of Cawd, and its full potential would be unlocked when a content creator by the name of Bass Shaman came around and started to play into the church idea a lot more. Lorne was now Cawd, his chat log was now the Holy Lorneography, and the people following this religion were now called Lorneographers. The Church of Cawd community had its ups and downs, but it stood strong, and although the name is retired, there are still a large number of people, including myself, who still enjoy Lorne Armstrong and his antics. One of the sole reasons the community has gone on for this long is the inclusion of phone conversations that were had with Lorne and the many different people all catfishing him for entertainment. In 2016, Ember Inferno, a community member and content creator, decided to send a letter with her phone number to Lorne, and Lorne obviously called that number. This led to Lorne discovering the Church of Cawd, and it also spawned a storyline of sorts, where various people all interact with Lorne and put him in situations that lead into total chaos. These catfishing calls can be separated into 6 sections, all of which have distinct characteristics and different storylines. First comes Emma's Inferno. This section is the one with the least amount of phone calls, most of which are lost to time. There also isn't much going on, it's just Lorne attempting to engage with his community and then realizing that it's a bad idea. Ramona's Saga is next, and it takes place between November of 2016 and September of 2017. These calls are probably the closest attempt at giving Lorne a realistic girlfriend, as Lorne's love interest is Ramona, a girl who is very smart yet kind and empathetic to a T. This is also the most normal relationship Lorne has, which says a lot about what's next to come. Casey's premiere is the shortest section out of all of them. Our love interest is Casey Monroe, the actress who played Kayla during the sting operation. As you can already guess, these calls were meant to push the limits of Lorne, to see how much he could really handle by throwing random and unrealistic events at him and seeing how he responds. Unlike Casey's premiere, Winifred's Ballad is the longest section out of all of them, spanning from July of 2017 to October of 2018. It also contains the most amount of calls out of all the catfishes. Our love interest is Winnie, who is, for lack of a better term, an unhinged psychopath. These sets of calls, I believe, are meant to push the boundaries just like Casey, but most of the time become so absurd that they just become humorous. Lorne is really tested in these calls, as each day was pretty much a roller coaster. Debbie's domination is a breath of fresh air, as instead of being absurd, it's more realistic like Ramona's section was. So realistic that Debbie never dates Lorne, which makes her unique compared to everyone else. Debbie's phone calls are very famous, as she breaks down Lorne's psyche, discussing events from his past like the sting, and addressing current problems like his drinking and his failure to pass his probation class. Debbie's section lasts from April of 2018 to October of 2018, and it runs simultaneously next to Winnie. Once October hit, Lorne went back to prison because he failed his probation class several times, and he keeps breaking the terms of his probation. He spends 6 months in prison, and then we finally get to the final section of our catfishing story, as of late. I like to call this one Jamie's Cam Show, where Lorne dates a girl named Jamie Amy, someone who appeared in previous sections as a porn star. This one takes a much simpler approach, not having as many characters as the previous sections. It's also known for the fact that Lorne speaks to what is essentially a robot voice for the majority of this relationship. And to my knowledge, it's still going, so there are still new things to listen to. There, it's done. I hope nobody goes on to make an 8-hour documentary about this guy.